Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. This one is player rankings with myself and George from Ingenuity Fantasy, which if you don't know about Ingenuity Fantasy, then check out. It's a free website, ingenuityfantasy.com. All sorts of good stuff on there. They've got match stats from Opta. They've got articles from various people about differentials, captaincy. They've got a transfer wizard, which is really cool. You basically just put in what position you want and what budget you've got, and it will rank options for you to bring in. And they've got the player ranking section, which myself and George will be talking about today. So that will involve 6 different categories. We'll pick our top 10 from each category. The categories being budget defenders, budget mids, premium mids, budget forwards, and premium forwards. So let's get into it.
Hi guys, welcome back to another FPL player ranking series with myself and Brad. Just quick caveat ahead of this episode. So this week, due to Brad being away next week, we will actually be covering the next 6 game weeks instead of 5 game weeks. So if you see any players who are, slightly lower than you think they should be or slightly higher than they should be, please bear in mind that we are covering the next 6 game weeks instead of the next 5. And so with that, perfect example of that is, Mr. Classic FPL himself, Ingenuity. I think we mentioned previously that Wolves are, very, very honest in terms of how they react to their fixture schedules. They play bad teams, they do badly. Sorry, they play bad teams, they do well. They play good teams, they do badly. So in that sense, Wolves' assets are quite dependable, your Cunha's and your Aït-Nouri's. But I mean, their upcoming schedule, we know how far forward he likes to get, and their upcoming schedule, including, Bournemouth, Fulham, Everton, Southampton, West Ham, Ipswich, and then Spurs. It doesn't get much better, does it?
Yeah, so good. It's not even the next 4, 5, 6 either. It's the next 10 game weeks. Unbelievable. Leicester at home, kind of towards the back end of that as well. It's just a joke of a fixture run. And we mentioned it last week that Wolves players will be climbing up our lists, and yeah, there's clear evidence of that in this one.
Yeah, and we just know the good thing about Aït-Nouri is, even if you don't trust Wolves' defence, you can trust him to get forward and get attacking returns. So, it's almost like the clean sheet is a bonus because of how, high up the pitch he will play. So even if you don't trust Wolves' ability to keep clean sheets, his attack and return potential is why he's at number 1 for both of us. And then, so, it's also why Semedo has entered both of our lists, just pretty much for the same reason. Also has attacking potential, but, naturally not as far forward as Aït-Nouri. But then, yeah, so just on, what we mentioned before regarding the fixture sets. So Kastan and Tarkowski. Now, they're in a pretty similar situation in that if this was a 5-week window instead of a 6-week window, I think they would both be a lot higher for the pair of us. And it's just because their next 4 fixtures for the pair of them are great. Kastan has Palace, Wolves, Brighton, and then Tottenham. And then Tarkowski has United, Brentford, Wolves, and West Ham. But then they both have Liverpool and Arsenal at the back end at 5 and 6, and then Forest and Bournemouth as that 7th fixture. So, if you're looking at Kastan and Tarkowski for the next 4 weeks, great. But they are absolutely not a hold beyond there.
Yeah, I mean, and quite a few people are probably in the situation where they're probably going to dead end their teams into the blank game week 29. So they're looking at, the next kind of 3-4 game weeks, however many it may be. In which case, these Everton and these Fulham guys are brilliant. So we're not saying they're not, I guess. We're just saying that long term, they're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Short term punt. So if you do have the transfers to make those plays, then they're absolutely worth a punt. But if you find yourself low on transfers because you'll be needing to spend another transfer to get them back out in 4 weeks, it's definitely not worth it. And then also, so Brad, you've loaded up on Forest players this week in your list. I mean, their fixtures are still quite tricky, but 3 of them, you're just starting to believe in Forest defence again.
It's not even so much that. I mean, Williams and Milenkovic have been 6 and 7 in my list for a few weeks, I think. Murillo's come in at 10, mainly just because of a lack of other options, though, more than anything else. I mean, again, we've got this longer kind of window that we're looking at. So the next three are bad: Newcastle, Arsenal, and City, bad. But after that, they've got Ipswich. Then there's United in there. So the fixtures do get a bit better over the longer period. So again, it's not that I think they're going to do great. It's more just that there's kind of a lack of other options in the budget defenders at the moment.
Yep, completely fair. And then just finally on the cheap defenders. So, I mean, he's nearly fallen out my list, but I am somewhat clinging onto that glimmer of hope with Reece James, much to Brad's dismay. I think, he did start 2 games in a row. He got a couple of returns, but then, he was benched last game. But they did also get battered 3-0, so who knows? Maybe Maresca's looking to make some changes.
Yeah, he's any excuse to talk up Reece James. I'm always here for it. I just don't see it right now. The next 3 as well. They've got a Saturday game, then a Tuesday game, then a Sunday game. So the games come a bit thick and fast in the next few, which is just terrible for James, as we know. Yeah,
I mean, it's fair. I think it's also important to mention that within Chelsea's next 7 fixtures, they do have all 3 promoted teams at home. And then on top of that, they also have Villa and Spurs. So, the fixtures are there. I think, if we were assured of him getting 90 minutes a game, I think he'd be, with those fixtures, near the top 3 for my list.
Yeah.
So it's just a minute's worth.
Yeah, but Southampton at home is that Tuesday game. So whether he does play both in a week, I'm not sure. And as we mentioned last week, or I think I mentioned it last week, the position he's playing just isn't great. He's playing as like a third centre-back, and Cucurella's just bombing on into like a number 10 position for some weird reason. Like, you'd want Reece James there, not Cucurella. I don't particularly get that. But maybe they are really trying to wrap up Reece James and keep him safe so he doesn't have to get up and down the pitch.
I think that's definitely part of it. And I think, we will see Maresca experiment quite a lot at the moment, especially as Reece James comes back. He'll play him further forward. He's done a lot of tinkering all season with Chelsea, in terms of the front three, in terms of positions. Caicedo inverted at right back. So I think we won't see the end. We won't see them settle on much, and Chelsea are very hard to predict in general at the moment. And that leads us on to the premium defenders. So just to mention, so we had, normally stuck with Trent at the top of both of our lists, but given Liverpool's blank in game week 29, we now see some of the Arsenal assets return to the top of both of our lists. Now, I'm under the impression that Ben White is back in the fold for Arsenal. Now, will he start every game in the next 5 or 6? Probably not, but I think he will, get at least 4 games under his belt in the next 5. Brad disagrees, but I just think, when Arsenal have had Ben White in the team, that was when they looked like world beaters. And the second that he fell off, that's when, Arsenal's performance took a bit of a fall off as well. So I just think what he gives to that team is too invaluable for him to miss that many games, especially considering they're chasing the league title.
Yeah, I can't see it personally. I do not think he gets 4 starts in the next 5, just because of the other options they've got. I mean, obviously Calafiori and Miles Skelly are typically left-sided, so I don't think they necessarily take minutes from White directly, but Timber definitely does. I can't see Timber not playing that many games, and their fixtures aren't even that good either. If their fixtures are unbelievable, then fine, but West Ham at home this week, don't get me wrong, that's great. Then it's Forest, United, Chelsea, Fulham, Everton. They're okay, they're not bad, but not good enough for me to have White anywhere near some of these other players that we'll get onto, like Kirkes, Gvardiol, just much better assets that are going to play.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's part of it. It is naturally a risky play, and I am operating under an assumption. Whether the assumption will be right or wrong remains to be seen. But it is naturally with inherent risk, and it is only going off that assumption. So if you're looking for a safer, I mean, first of all, I think Ben White is too expensive anyway. But just in terms of potential points there, I do think I'm more just willing him to start just because much prefer Arsenal as an outfit when he plays. And then, yeah, so I mean, speaking of the man himself, Kirkes, any excuse for me and Brad to talk about some Bournemouth players, we will leap at that chance. We mentioned, Bournemouth's fixtures are still as good as ever. We know Kirkes likes to get forward. I think if I within that specific budget range, that sort of 5 million mark, there is no better option than Kirkes at the moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. Their fixtures are a joke. I mean, every single team they play in the next 6 game weeks has conceded a lot of goals. Wolves at home, fantastic. Brighton away, just got battered. Well, not recently, but got battered 5-0 by Forest, or maybe even more than 5-0, I can't remember now. Yeah, then Tottenham, Brentford, Ipswich, West Ham. The fixtures are just too good to kind of ignore him or ignore any Bournemouth assets, really. Yeah,
100%. And I'd be shocked if there isn't at least multiple clean sheets and multiple attacking returns for Kirkes during that stretch. Of the Bournemouth defence, I'd say if you have that budget, he is the one to go and get. Do not overthink it.
Yeah.
And then also, it pains me to say because we found out firsthand how good he is. Gvardiol has entered Brad's list at 6, my list at 9. I mean, we saw against Newcastle the positions that he's occupying, and just his capacity to get forward and be involved in that part of the pitch. Gvardiol was looking like an increasingly brilliant option FPL wise.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially with Marmoush in that team, it helps him so much. Marmoush cuts inside a lot and takes up a lot of like central positions, meaning that Gvardiol takes up the attacking positions on that left hand side. So and it's worked, more importantly, for the last few games. So I can't see that changing anytime soon, and that makes Gvardiol a ridiculous value at around 6 million, 5.9. The fixtures actually aren't great. It's Liverpool, Tottenham, Forest, then a few good ones, but I don't really think it matters that much. I think he is almost playing as a winger, so it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and as we said before, though, City's fixtures, they had such a rough time of it, and they're kind of right in the middle of the weeds at the moment. But every week their fixtures get better and better. So after this week, the Liverpool fixture's gone, and then the Man United fixture enters the fold. Then the Tottenham fixture's gone, and the Crystal Palace fixture enters the fold. Then the Forest fixture's gone. Their fixtures will get better and better. So I think you'll see Gvardiol get higher and higher. And then, just the final player we want to touch on. So, Konate, I mean, I've already got him quite low. Granted, Liverpool are a fantastic defence, and that is why he's in my list. But Konate not featuring at all in yours? I really hope you're not worried about Jarrell Pants-Kwanzaa getting some minutes there.
Yeah, I mean, Konate only really entered my list anyway because of the double, to be honest. I don't think that Konate is a player that you really want without a double. I just don't really have much interest in him. But I was impressed with Kwanzaa when he came on the other day. Yeah, Kwanzaa has been rubbish at the start of the season and whenever else. But when he came on, he was very, very good. In fact, if it wasn't for him, he literally stopped a goal, basically.
Yeah, that ball across the box, he did get a leg in.
And don't get me wrong, it's not just like one thing that we're hanging up on here. He was good in that game. Granted, it was only 45 minutes or whatever it was, but it wouldn't surprise me, given Liverpool's schedule as well. Liverpool have got a tough schedule and a busy schedule. It wouldn't surprise me if Kwanzaa got one game, which is enough for Konate to not be in this list.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely fair. Again, I think I'm going off instincts of, if Liverpool were, in the UEFA Cup sort of region, then I think, we see a bit more propensity for rotation. But they are leading the Premier League, and, Arsenal are fairly hot on their heels. They saw what happened earlier in the season. They dropped points when Kwanzaa played at the start of the season, and I just think that memory will be enough to keep Konate starting. So I think Konate is absolutely the better player.
Yeah. I do agree with that for sure, but I just, especially given Konate is pretty injury prone himself. I mean, pretty error prone, but also pretty injury prone, more importantly, himself. I just don't think that they'll want to, and also given that the next few fixtures, there is Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. Like, the fixtures are thick and fast for Liverpool, so I could see maybe one Quansah appearance in the next few.
Yeah. Hopefully not. So that rounds out our defenders section. Let us know what you think of our list. Let us know if there's anyone we missed, and we will see you again for the midfielders. All right, welcome back to the midfielders segment, and we will get started with our weekly glazing of Bournemouth assets. So we mentioned last week, actually, we said, don't be worried or concerned about getting multiple Bournemouth midfielders, whether it's Dango, Cliver or Semenyo. Don't be worried about getting 2 out of those 3 in your team, because there's a good chance they can all return, and they all returned. So, if you needed any more evidence that having multiple of them, or one covers the other, not the case at all. Like, they could easily all go off at the same time. And with that being said, I have now joined Brad in moving Dango up to my 1 spot. I just think he is the most direct of the 3 options, and that's just naturally from where he's playing on the pitch. I have still got Cliver at 2. It's very close between him and Semenyo. Semenyo seemed a bit more active, but I think just that presence on pens for me is why Cliver just pips him to 2. But I can understand why you've got him at 2.
Yeah,
Semenyo
in that game was unbelievable. Everything went through Semenyo going forward. He was fantastic in that game. And the main thing for me is that Semenyo plays 90 minutes every single game, whereas Cliver will come off around the 75th minute every single game. Especially now that players like Tavernier, I think I mentioned this last week, like Tavernier's back. That's a big one, because he will take minutes from someone. Maybe it'll be from Brooks, but Cliver just doesn't seem to play many 90 minutes, so that's the reason that he's behind Semenyo for me.
Yeah, and it's completely fair. Again, though, I think the same principle applies. If you have one of them already, it's not worth switching to another one. But it's absolutely not too late to go get another one and have multiple of them in your team. So yeah, you can't go wrong with either of them, to be honest. And then so the Trossard-Nwaneri debate. So the Martinelli injury has opened up the doors for these two. I think Trossard you'll generally see play further forward, so I absolutely hear the Trossard argument. For me, Nwaneri is just the better player, and he looks electric whenever he gets the ball. And also his value at 4.5 million is absolutely insane for the team and position he's playing for. So, I mean, not a lot to split them in terms of potential output, but for me, being the better player and way cheaper just pips Nwaneri for Trossard.
Yeah, minutes wise, they should both get good minutes. So that's not too much of a concern. Nwaneri was fantastic in the game the other day. He really was good.
Yeah.
I think he got man of the match, and rightfully so. He was fantastic. Or maybe he didn't, I don't know. But either way, yeah, he's brilliant. The only reason I've got Nwaneri just under Trossard, there's really not much between them, to be honest. They're both great. But I just don't quite know when Saka's back. And I don't know if Saka is potentially back within this 6-game week period or towards the end of it. But I don't think that needs to be worried about right now. If you're looking to buy one of them, then I wouldn't use that as a reason to not buy Nwaneri, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, even with Saka back, Nwaneri at the moment is making a really good case to start on the other wing. So I think, if he carries on like this, I think you can definitely feel optimistic about him, beating out a Trossard or a Marino or something along those lines. And he's definitely beating out Sterling. So yeah, I mean, it's 4.5 million definitely can't go wrong. And then so I briefly want to talk about is Nkunku. So you've got Nkunku at 6. So naturally, with Jackson being injured, Nkunku is probably going to get the bulk of those minutes up top. For me, Chelsea looked a little out of sorts, to say the least, recently. So I just kind of need to see it to believe it before I sort of, back the Nkunku train.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that, Chelsea have looked bad for a few weeks now, to be honest. It's not even just that Brighton game. I mean, that's where they looked at their worst probably, but they haven't been great for a few weeks. And Nkunku in that game didn't even look like he was really playing as the striker. It was more Palmer higher up than Nkunku. So, I mean, that's not great for Nkunku, obviously, but I just think that Chelsea will bring it back, really. They've got Southampton at home and Leicester at home soon, which are ridiculous fixtures. So they've got the fixtures to bring it back. They've got the players too as well. So I can't see them going on this bad run for much longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely fair. And, you know, if they do start to produce some results, I'm sure you'll see Nkunku slide up my list and become better value. But at the moment, I just struggling to believe in Chelsea. And then on that subject, though, speaking of a team I am now starting to believe in again is Man City. And that's why I've got Savinho in at 6 for me. I think, again, he's another player who has looked really, really good recently. You know, he's got back-to-back 90-minute games. He was an absolute menace against us. But yeah, I think I just really believe in the player as well. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, I absolutely love Savinho. Every time you watch him, he's so direct. I mean, whether he's... I don't think he'll play on the left much anymore, given that Marmoush is there, but when he was playing on the left, the deliveries into Haaland were a joke. Now he's on the right. I don't think that hinders him in any way. He's absolutely brilliant. I'm not that convinced that he's just going to start every game at the moment, even though I think he should. I am just not sure that he will.
Yeah, I mean, and it's completely fair because, you know, they have got we know Pep Roulette is still ever present, you know, he'll like to rotate in his Dokus and his Grealishes and all of this stuff and move Foden around to try and get KDB in. So, you know, there is a lot of uncertainty about what that City starting lineup will be. I just think at the moment it's hard to argue that Savinho and Marmoush are the best options. Especially considering they just beat, you know, pretty good Premier League opposition 4-0. I think Pep will probably be quite keen to run that back. And then, so another return actually to the cheap mid section for Brad's former number one, and I think my former number one for a week, Mitoma. So, you know, he's now got 3 double-digit hauls in the last 5 game weeks, I believe. Are Brighton back? Is Mitoma back?
I think so. I think the problem we had with Mitoma a few weeks ago was that, or maybe more than a few weeks ago, was that he just kept getting benched randomly. Not quite sure what that was all about, really. But since the other day against Chelsea, his goal was absolutely ridiculous to start with.
Oh, that was filth. That control,
unbelievable touch. And he's just been in good form recently. And Brighton's fixtures, they're not unbelievable, but they're not bad. It's Southampton, Bournemouth, Fulham, City, Villa, Palace. Not too bad, really. Yeah. And I think Brighton will just kind of go about their business and be okay in those games.
Yeah. I think, you know, also it's worth mentioning, you know, Brighton sort of fall into the Brentford category of when they're playing big teams, you know, they don't just sit back and tuck in and defend. They will try and attack against the big teams as well, as we saw against, you know, them playing against Chelsea. So I think you can feel a bit more optimistic going into tricky fixtures if you own Brighton attackers. But again, they fall into the Brentford category of never ever get one of their defenders because it's going to be an absolute bloodbath at the other end as well.
Yeah, although you say that, I've actually got Verbruggen in my team and he walked away with an assist.
Oh, fair.
I mean, I did actually...
Well, a lot of those must be... The extra save points must come in quite...
I did have to take the -1 last week, but it was worth it for the 11-pointer this week.
Yeah, fair. So you got the Chelsea clean sheet points?
Yeah, the assist in that game and the clean sheet,
the assist as well, yeah, very true. And then, so just to finally round off the cheap mids, I personally don't see it or believe in it lasting, but you've got Marino in at 8. I don't think we see him as the Arsenal forward option frequently, and I just think his profile doesn't suit goal scoring or assist getting enough for him to touch my list. But
I think you're right. I completely agree with you. But so who do you think does play there?
I think we see Trossard play there.
And who plays out wide?
And then it's a good point.
There's
a
no
good point. I think
you have to play Sterling at that point, which I really think Arteta won't want to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Sterling has been poor. You know, it's very hard to argue to include Sterling in the team. I think there's just a bit too much uncertainty about whether it's going to be Sterling or Sterling up top or Marino playing for me to include Marino.
There is, and that's fair. I think that I think Arteta will give Marino a chance there now, though. I do think that he'll get a chance at least.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to. Yeah,
and that's against for an Arsenal team. A chance of him playing up front at 6 million is enough for him to enter my list.
Yeah, I mean, very valid argument, to be fair. And then, so premium mids. So, I mean, I know he has one less fixture, but I'd still back Salah to do more in 4 fixtures than I do Palmer to do in 5. I mean, Salah is just Thanos at this point. He's completely inevitable. I think Palmer over him, even with the extra fixture, is crazy. Yeah,
it's close. I mean, I don't think it's like a certainty and a definite by all means, but it's also the fixtures as well. The Southampton at home and Leicester at home for Chelsea.
Yeah,
I think Palmer could go big in both of those games, to be honest. And that is basically that and the extra fixture is kind of the only reason. I mean, it's close. If they had the same amount of fixtures, there's no way I'd even be considering it.
Yeah, completely fair. And then I think it's worth mentioning, on this list, anyone below Mbeumo is very tricky, weedy territory as far as bringing them into your team. I mean, you've got Fernandes at 4. I think just because of the 6 game week schedule, I think the 5 and 6 fixtures for them are Forest, City, and then they've got Newcastle in the 7th one. So he's a decent short-term option if you still have him. He's not a sell yet, but he is absolutely a sell in a couple of weeks' time. And then for me, I personally have Diaz quite high in that sense. I think Diaz. I mean, he played really well last game. Slot tends to ride the hot hand a lot, so I think I just see Diaz getting the bulk of those starting minutes and. That's why he's slipped in at 5 for me. But you don't believe in Diaz's starting minutes?
I don't really know. Maybe. I mean, like you say, everyone below Mbeumo on this list is just a bit rubbish. I mean, I've got Fernandes, Son, Odegaard above the others purely because they take penalties and basically for no other reason. So Diaz, I do think he probably is first choice at this point, but as we mentioned earlier, Liverpool have such a kind of busy schedule in the next few weeks that even him being first choice, I don't think means that he gets every single game.
Yeah, completely fair. And then, I mean, also briefly, I mean, I dropped KDB out my list. Your own man, Jared Bowen, you don't think it's worth a punt? I mean, with Leicester, Everton, and Wolves in the next 5.
We're just really bad. I think. I think if we're going to get something, a goal or an assist from anyone, it will be Bowen. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think we're good enough to put Bowen in amongst these, admittedly not great players. But I just think that we're not good enough right now.
Completely fair. So the old reverse jinx category.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So, right. So that rounds out our midfielders segment. Let us know what you think of our lists. Let us know if there's anyone you think we missed, and we will see you again for the forwards. Right. Welcome back to the forwards section, and we will get started straight away with the man who has jumped to number 1 on both of our lists. That is Cunha. So we mentioned earlier that Wolves are very dependable fixture-wise. If they're playing someone good, they're probably not going to surprise you. And if they're playing someone bad, they probably will just get returns. So, I mean, Wolves' fixtures, as far as the next 6 go, I think we mentioned earlier, are absolutely fantastic. They've got Fulham at home. So after Bournemouth, they've got Fulham at home, Everton at home, Southampton, West Ham, Ipswich, and then Tottenham. I mean, if you're a Cunha owner looking at that, you are absolutely licking your lips.
Yeah, for sure. I think Cunha is just the forward to buy right now. I think there's not much more to say. If you are selling a forward, which I imagine quite a lot of people are with this week or next week, then Cunha's the one to buy.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think a lot of people are debating it's probably between Cunha and Marmoush, and a lot of people, are maybe moving off Gakpo. So I would personally, yeah, you're right. I think Cunha is just so dependable, and he's shown all season that he also has the potential to go big. He's also a bonus point machine because he is that far ahead of every other Wolves player, and he's so involved in the build-up play. That that bonus point insurance is also really, really tasty. Unlike Marmoush, who has problems of being surrounded by other great players, Haaland, Foden, who tend to chew up bonus points. So I think Cunha definitely has a nice floor there. And then also what we will talk about. Brad was the main messiah for this. Beto. Beto, now I think that's 4 goals in the last 3 weeks or something like that. Beto looks fantastic. Everton playing great football. And I'm assuming you held him. You definitely didn't sell him.
No, I still got him. My plan always was to actually just bring him in for that double and then sell him. But Ndai's injury meant that I sold him instead. Which worked out quite nicely. Yeah, so I bought him in for Gakpo in the double so that I could get slot, which has worked out ridiculously well. Not the slot part necessarily, but the Gakpo to Beto part has worked out very nicely. And I think I'm just going to be keeping him now. I mean, I don't think there's any kind of imminent return date for Calvert-Lewin. So and even if there was, I'm not sure that he'd be starting over Beto right now. So that transfer's worked out ridiculously well for me, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think what's important to note about Beto as well, he has a really solid floor. Like the last 3 games he's had 0.7, 0.65 and a 0.6 XGI. So, that's really consistent output. But also, his price. So, Cunha and Wissa are compared to him on the slightly more expensive end. So if you are finding yourself with, 5 million or below, he is, because of his price and compared to the other sort of players around him in this list, he is a fantastic filler option. I think Everton look to be playing better football. If you do have that sort of budget, there's absolutely no reason it shouldn't be Beto. And on that subject, so the man he's replaced actually, so Beto climbing up, João Pedro. Now, it's quite a tricky one because Brighton, we always said when Brighton start playing better, maybe João Pedro returns to near the top. But unfortunately for him, he's been dropped and Brighton seems to be playing better. So, I mean, if you're a João Pedro owner, probably begin to think about moving off of him because I can't see Brighton messing with their lineup after demolishing Chelsea 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, it's still hard to see him not getting some starts, but I just think that he's not gonna. It's not certain that he'll start every game now like it was before. So I think that's enough to just get rid of him, basically. Especially as there is other options right now that have good fixtures and are pretty cheap. I think it is a problem that they played really well against Chelsea without him.
Yeah, completely. So, definitely reasons to be worried. And then Raul. I mean, I've got Raul at 4. I think, he's still able to return fairly consistently. Granted, there is a slight minutes issue with him, but, I think his last 4 games, he's got 70 minutes plus. He's registered a goal and an assist. And the underlyings aren't bad. His last 2 games got a 0.5 XGI and a 0.6, but you're still quite worried about his minutes.
Yeah, I don't like it. I haven't been. He's been relatively high up my lists in the last few weeks just by default, just because there's no other better options. I don't think he's great. I do think he's a very good footballer, and if he was a 90-minute man, given that he's on penalties, probably he would be brilliant. But I just don't like that he gets such early subs at points. Like, there's been times where he's been subbed off in the 50s, in the 60s, more recently at 70s. But again, I wouldn't, given that there's a couple of times soon when there's midweek games and weekend games, it just wouldn't surprise me one bit to see Muniz get one start randomly, which I don't like.
Yeah, It's completely fair. I think for me, just because there are more pressing transfers that need to be done, people adjusting for blanks and doubles, I would probably hold him because, they do have Palace, Wolves, Brighton and Tottenham in their next four, and I can definitely see goals there. So I don't think he's again falls into that don't buy, don't sell category.
Because
he
again this is what I was mentioning about another player as well. The best fixture out of them lot is Wolves away, which is the midweek fixture, which is probably the one if there was going to be one that he didn't start, I think it would be that one. So I don't know. I'd always be worried about him getting a bench in, I think.
Yeah, very fair. And then, the rest of the list is, you've kind of got that Welbeck to Vardy Midland, but I think it'll be quite funny to talk about Man United options. So I've gone, just an absolute mid-off down here at number 9, proper clown scrap. So Xerxes versus Højlund. From what I've heard, I can't say I watch a huge amount of Man United games. I watch the highlights naturally, but apparently Xerxes was actually quite good. What I can say, though, is Højlund has had the least touches in the penalty area of every striker in the Premier League this season, which, I think it does not really get worse for striker prospects.
This is the most pointless, 2 minutes of talk. They're both terrible. You've only put Xerxes in there just to be different as well. You haven't even done it for any good reason, so it's the most pointless conversation. They're both rubbish.
Yeah, you're dead right. Yeah, don't touch either of them with a barge pole. Even United fans, you can't get them either. Right, so onto more pressing matters. Premium forwards. Now, again, it's worth mentioning that this is the 6-week sort of window that we're looking at, because Newcastle's immediate 4-week window, for example, with Nottingham Forest and then Liverpool and then a blank, Isak would probably feature lower, but it's just because we've got the Brentford at home and then Leicester fixtures out the other end that you see Isak at number 2 here. But the main discussion point I think here, just because he's entered a lot of people's considerations, is Marmoush. Now, again, found out firsthand how brilliant he is. It's unavoidable for me to talk him up, though. He looked absolutely brilliant, and especially considering a lot of people potentially moving off Gakpo, he presents a real option, especially at his price point.
Yeah, he was very, very good. Not even just... Obviously, he scored a hat-trick, so yeah, brilliant. But his general play was just fantastic.
Yeah.
He's just if you're a defender, he's impossible to pick up, basically, because he starts on the wing and then he'll find himself dead centre. Is a fullback just going to go all the way over there? Or do you pass him on to one of the people that are picking up Haaland? What is the play? It's a really weird position he takes up, which I just think he's going to get so much success from.
Yeah, and I think also it's worth mentioning that because of his versatility, he can play the 9 if he needs to. He can play just behind the striker. He can play out on the wing. That means he is slightly more insulated from Pep Roulette than your more traditional wingers like a Doku or a Grealish or even a Savinho are, because of just where he can be deployed. For example, if Haaland gets injured, he's the next man going straight up top. So I think there's a lot to be encouraged about with Marmoush, and I think for a lot of people the debate is between Marmoush and Cunha, and to be honest there isn't really a wrong option. I think Cunha is slightly more reliable, but I think Marmoush, his ceiling as part of that City team is just incredibly high. So yeah, it's an absolute toss up there. There isn't really a wrong answer. And then, speaking of potentially wrong answers, just because all three of them blank, this again is another quite hot button topic for a lot of people at the moment, because these might be 3 of the strikers that people are considering moving off, especially given they all blank in game week 29, and that is Watkins, Mateta and Gakpo. Now, what's important is, if you do have some of those, within the next 4 weeks, some of them do have great fixtures, and it's just about if you are going to sell, moving off them at the right time.
Yeah, they're slightly different in the sense that I think if you've got Gakpo, we'll get a bit more information from the Liverpool-Villa game. We're recording this before the Liverpool-Villa game, and we'll get a bit more information from that, albeit it sounds like he won't feature at all. So
yeah,
that doesn't leave you with much information for the following game week. I think that he's a sell now. Given that it is Man City as well in the next game week, I just think it's a good time to get off, especially given that Cunha's fixtures are really good now as well. Admittedly, Liverpool do play Southampton in a couple of weeks, but I just don't think it's worth holding him through this kind of messy period with potentially him not playing and also a bad fixture, given that you can just move him on to Cunha now. I think that, yeah, he's worth moving on now. I think the other two, not so much, just because Watkins and Mateta, both of their fixtures are pretty good for the next three. I mean, Watkins, it's a red fixture this week on the FPL app, but it's Chelsea. I don't know if it's at home or away. It's Chelsea anyway, which it just shouldn't be a red fixture. It just shouldn't. It's not as tough,
especially for an attacker.
Yeah. It's not that tough, I don't think. Mateta and Palace have pretty good fixtures for the next few as well. I think you keep those if you are not playing your free hit in game week 29. I think you just keep those until just before game week 29 and sell them then. Whereas I would probably sell Gakpo now.
Yeah, and I think that's all it is. So if you do have them three, it's about timing that move off, because there is still a bit of juice to be squeezed from them over these, this next fixture period. So yeah, timing is going to be everything there. And then the final three. Now, the final three is naturally by default, just because there's not a huge amount of players in this premium category. It's worth mentioning that Solanke is expected back within the next 2 weeks. So, in about 2 weeks' time, and that is why he's at number 8. Remains to be seen. I mean, Tottenham are pretty pants at the moment, so he probably won't be a legitimate option, but, it remains to be seen when he gets back. And then Jackson is expected back in April, so around about mid-April. So, yeah, again, there's quite a lot of these strikers that injury-wise people are moving off. Gakpo, Jackson, Watkins, and this is where the bulk of the transfers will be. So this is why it's such a hot button topic at the moment. But yeah, again, I think it's probably Marmoush and Cunha, and I imagine Brad would co-sign that. But it's just about, navigating it properly.
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, yeah, Cunha's got a good entry. So Cunha's got a good entry now, because he's got a good fixture this week.
Yeah.
Then he's got a couple of okay ones, I think. So he's got good entry points, whether you sell now, whether you sell in 2 weeks, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Can't really go wrong there. Right, so that rounds out the end of the strikers and indeed this week's episode of FPL Player Rankings. Again, let us know what you think of our lists. Let us know if there's anyone you think we missed. And we will see you again, not next week, but in 2 weeks' time.
And that is all for this one. If you liked the video, make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.